everyone, welcome to Pastor's Library. My name is Stephen Redman, and this is the channel where we talk about theology books that might be on a reading list for your bachelor's or master's degree in theology or in biblical studies, or perhaps that are on a reading list for a seminary course that you're on, or simply books that have piqued your interest. If you like what we have to say, please give us a thumbs up. It all supports the algorithm, you know. And also remember to subscribe and click on the bell if you haven't done. And we really appreciate your support. Remember, I do try to answer every question that's thrown at me. It might be with a, don't know, or it might be with something more constructive. But please feel free to leave questions below. Today, it's nearly Christmas. This is our first video of December. And I figure right now, some of you might be looking for a good book to give to someone in your family or a close friend. Maybe something that's not too heavy, because we do deal with a lot of heavy books, don't we, here? So I'm going to start with some books that I bought for my daughters in recent years. And I will recommend a few others, which I think are pretty safe bets. None of which are terribly expensive, which makes Christmas a little bit easier to bear, doesn't it? So today, no commentaries, but we will be dealing with some things that are useful and helpful. Now, ones that I have given to my girls in the last few years, this one is by Terence Fretheim. It's 136 pages, fairly large typeface, easy chapter titles. It's called God So Enters into Relationships That ... And I think I bought a dozen of these. I rather fell in love with it. And my girls all got one that Christmas, and a few other people got them as well. But I can only say to you that this was such a lightweight yet refreshing book for me to read. And my daughters still talk about it even now. So that can't be bad, can it? So this book, it deals with key insights from Scripture with genuine theological reflections on the nature and activity of God, God's relationship with the world and with the natural order. Relational language pervades this. And so if relationship with God is something important to you, I would suggest this is a great one. Not terribly expensive, very, very good read. I think I read this in an evening, and I don't think it took my girls that much longer. It really is a great read to engage with. Now, this one is a hardbound book that's written by Richard Borkham. I'm a huge fanboy. He's really excellent in his writings. But this is put together as the notes from a lecture series that he did. It's called the Frumentous Lectures for 2015. And basically, this is 4 chapters: the revelation of the divine presence, the revelation of the divine name, the revelation of the divine character, and the revelation of the Trinity. And this has some footnotes, but not many. It's quite simple. It's not a heavy read. I would suggest anyone can get into this. But I would say I was really blessed by this, and I engaged with it to such an extent that I just felt I was rediscovering God. That sounds powerful, doesn't it? Must be. So watch out for this in your stocking this year. This book, I think, was my last year's choice for my daughters, called Tell Her Story. It's by Nijay Gupta, who is a very profound theologian these days. His output in books, either in books he's written or books he's edited or been part of the editorial team of, is just never ending. He writes profusely. I read his blog. He's a really great guy. And I cannot recommend this too strongly. Now, having 3 grown-up daughters, I thought this was important for them to read. But if I'm honest with you, I only thought that because I, as a grown-up man, had read it and got so much from it. So here, Nije Gupta talks about the key women in the early church, talks about Phoebe, Priscilla, Junia, and Nympha, and these people who had such a huge impact in the early church and were clearly leaders, many of them teachers. You do get a little bit of mention of Deborah from the Old Testament, but this is mainly about church women. It also deals with those age-old questions about what about Paul prohibiting women from teaching, and what about the submission texts. And it's all a really, really good read. I'm quite certain if it hasn't already won awards, it will be winning awards in the immediate future. I know it's gone to multiple prints. This is clearly a big seller, so I recommend that one too. Now, this year, as in any year, we've lost some great people. And I just think this is a good time to buy good works of now deceased Christians for Christmas presents. And the first one I would suggest is Jürgen Moltmann's The Crucified God. Now, this was published in 1974, 360 pages. This is a theology book, but I would suggest Moltmann's writing here is so easy to comprehend and follow that you can give this to anybody that has got what we in England would call a GCSE. It is someone who can read, basically. Yes, there are lots of endnotes at the end of the chapters, but can I just say something to you? If you haven't read this, you need to read it. It is an absolutely profound work talking about our Jesus, the Jesus of the Gospels. And whereas Moltmann, I do feel, has written other books that are very, very excellent, this is the one that no one should go away without reading. So it's a good investment in a friend or in a family member for Christmas, particularly if they have a leaning towards theological matters. That's maybe a bit different to the first few books I've shown you. But this is a classic work and one we should engage with. Sadly, this year we also lost Michael Heiser. Michael Heiser was an Old Testament man, a great Hebrew and other languages of that era, other ancient Near Eastern languages. This book, which got great recommendations from John Goldingay and Trempleman III to get it out and going there, has caused a little bit of a stir. You'll find YouTube channels in favour of it, YouTube channels against it. But I have to say to you, if you are a person who reads with an open mind and also with a Bible open on your desk, this is actually a good book. And whether or not you agree with some of it, well, that's fine. If you read properly, you chew it all up and you spit out the gristle. And I would suggest to you this is a great book for that. What I would specifically say about this, though, this is a great one to give to a present to someone who isn't particularly into theology, because it isn't too heavy. It's very well laid out. It's got some great quotes in it. I mean, for example, this is one that I used a yellow highlighter on. The chronology of his encounters in Genesis would tell us that he had heard Yahweh's voice before. This aural recognition is present in other passages involving Abraham that we will see in a moment. But I also think Abraham visually recognized his visitor from those previous encounters. Why did I highlight that? Because he is suggesting that Michael Heiser recognized God by looking at him. And I thought that was an interesting concept. And you don't have to be a great thinker to sit back and think, interesting. Of course, that was in the context of a chapter. Lots of really good things in there. In fact, that chapter's got so many yellow highlights in it. So those are two authors which are good to recommend for Christmas presents this year for people. What I would say is I can hardly get through any form of giving period without mentioning Eugene Peterson. This is the guy who translated The Message and has written profusely. His way of handling English and putting words on the page is way up there. Absolutely an excellent guy. Here are two that I should recommend. This one, Along Obedience in the Same Direction, I think this is the revised and expanded version, but I think this is way over 20 years old. This is the celebrating 200,000 copies in print version, which I suppose, yes. So this was printed in 2000. It's 2024, so even this version is old now. But this is really a great discipleship book. And it's got endorsements from Richard J. Foster, from Dallas Willard, from Michael Card, an interesting comment. Those are people who've got behind this book. And I don't know anyone that hasn't benefited when they've read this. So that's a thoroughly good choice for somebody stocking this year. If they've got that already, or if you aren't sure if they are, this is an interesting one to give. It's called The Wisdom of Each Other. And this is an exchange of letters between Eugene Peterson and his friend. And these letters are slightly edited in some places, but they're really interesting as you see them debating with each other. And what I would say to you is this can be read in really small chunks. It's ideal for someone who maybe doesn't read a lot, but they will really get something of God out of the pages here. So that's The Wisdom of Each Other. I think this is 111 pages. Not a lot. Again, if you wanted to, you could sit down and read this easily in an evening. But I would suggest this is the sort of thing that you might read 2 or 3 pages before going to sleep at night and make it last a month. So that's another good Oscar Peterson. Oscar Peterson, no. It isn't a good Oscar Peterson. I've got a number of his CDs and they're very good. But this is Eugene Peterson. Similar guy, really. Similar guy. So, one more book. If you like buying Bibles for people, The Second Testament by Scott McKnight is a really recent translation of the New Testament. It was designed to follow up John Goldingay's translation of the First Testament. And what can I say about this? It's hardbound, comes in a nice slip cover. I have had a copy of this literally in my armchair at home, in the little thing where I put the remote controls. I've had it there all year, dipping into it daily. Let's be critical, shall we? Let's say that this is difficult to read in places because it's designed to slow you down. I'm the sort of guy, you can give me 5 chapters to read to get through my Bible in a year, and I will whiz through those 5 chapters, and it's almost like a competition to see how quick I can do it compared to yesterday. I don't really think like that, but sometimes I look at the clock and that was quick. But you can't read this quick because some of the things in it are difficult to swallow, difficult to process. For example, if you go to the beginning of Mark's Gospel, it talks about Johann the Dipper. And you'll say, who on earth is that? Of course, we're talking about John the Baptist. And you will see names and places that will be much more literal or more like they would have been in the Greek. And you will have to stop to process it and say, what am I reading? Now, let me tell you something. If you can pick up any Bible or any section of any Bible that you have to slow down to read, that will be a huge benefit to you. And having gone through this now, I can say to you, this has been a real blessing to me this year. Is it the best translation on the market? Of course it isn't. Is it a good translation? Yes, I think it is. But does it do the job it was designed for, which is to slow down your reading so that you can adequately process what you're reading on the page and take it in? wow, this really does it very successfully. And so I've sort of found that I don't even want to try and read 5 chapters a day in this. I often don't even read a full chapter, but I might sit and read a column, get to the bottom and start it again and read another one. Because actually it's just making me recognise things in my Bible that I haven't done before. That's a great gift to give someone you love, someone who can cope with it. It's not using other languages, it's just different. Here's Romans chapter 8, verse 28. We know that God co-works all things for good with those who love God, with those called consistent with the intention. Because those whom he knew before, he also predetermined those to be co-morphed to his son's image, so that he is the firstborn among many siblings. Those predetermined, those he also called, those he also righted, those righted, those he also splendid. Therefore, what are we to say about these things? If God is for us, who is against us? This is generally, you will know where you are in the Bible when you're reading this. But some things you just have to stop and say, so those called, those he righted, those he splendid. It just allows you to really consider the language. I think it's a good read. Now, I'm not going to give you any other recommendations of books to go out and buy for friends this year. But if you don't want to get them a book, or dare I say, if you are buying this for someone who's a real student, someone who is really reading the top-notch things, why not buy them in their name a subscription to a journal? Now that is a really good gift. One of my daughters bought me a subscription to the Tyndale Bulletin, and guess what? I renewed it this year. It's a great journal. And I mean, typically, this one has got 7 journal articles and 2 dissertation summaries in this particular journal. And you get 2 of those a year, and that's actually a very cheap journal to buy. I subscribe to the Journal of Pentecostal Theology, which I've been getting for years. Honestly, I get more from this one than probably any other journal on the market. I find some really good comments in here. And the Journal of Pentecostal and Charismatic Christianity, which is again a fairly low-cost one. That's a fairly cheap one to buy for someone. Numa, this is an expensive one to buy. I think I've had 3 editions this year, and I can't even bear to think how much it costs. This is a fairly expensive one. It's a Brill journal, but this is the top level of journal for Pentecostal thought. And there is one other which I would never be without, and that is the Catholic Biblical Quarterly. 4 copies a year, one of the cheapest journals on the market. Everybody writes for this. Loads of people. Just because it says Catholic, they're not all Catholics, although you'd be surprised at some of them that are. But there's every level of Protestant geared up in here as well. And all I can say is the range of book reviews are excellent. I get loads of ideas of books from this journal 4 times a year. It's very, very good quality. And like all journals, the writing's pretty much on the edge of research. Some of it you'll agree with, some of it you won't, but all of it will stretch your thinking. So those are my recommendations for what to buy people for Christmas this year. Whether it's a 1-year subscription and then it's up to them after that, or whether it's a simple book to put in the hands of someone who doesn't really do theological reading, but might be enticed by something excellent. From Fretheim to Peterson, from McKnight through Borkham and Maltman and Heiser. These are ideas for you this year. I hope you will, whatever you do, be a blessing to those around you this Christmas. Remember to subscribe, click on the bell, and like this if you have liked it, and leave a question or a remark below, and I will try and get back to you. Until next time, everybody, goodbye. Bye.